Good day, everyone, and thank you for joining TAG's FinTech South 2020 and this deep dive for transforming tech for the new normal. We've got a great panel lined up for you today, and today's deep dive is a Verizon-sponsored interview discussing the need for speed and how 5G transforms finance and commerce. And my name is Jude Fils-Aime. I'll be your moderator. I'm with Verizon Business Group, and without further ado, I want to introduce our two panelists. We've got Scott Steinmetz, and he'll introduce himself shortly, as well as Luke Boivin. Scott joins us from Allianz, and Luke Boivin joins us from Verizon. So, Scott, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Sure, thank you. My name is Scott Steinmetz. I'm the regional manager of Allianz Risk Consulting for Midcore Business in North America here. This is the loss control and risk engineering function of underwriting process. I've been with Allianz for nearly 25 years and was previously employed in the environmental engineering consulting practice before that. I'm also involved on an international scale exploring the confluence of insurance and technology. Just maybe a few words about Allianz. Allianz Global Corporate and Specialty is a leading corporate insurance carrier and business unit of Allianz Group, a European multinational financial services company headquartered in Munich, Germany. We provide risk consultancy, property and casualty insurance solutions, and alternative risk transfer solutions for commercial, corporate, and specialty risks across 10 lines of business. And our customers range from global Fortune 500 companies to medium-sized businesses. I'm delighted to be here with you today.
Thank you for that, Scott. And Luke?
Hey, thank you, Jude. Good afternoon, everybody. Luke Boivin. I'm a director of solution architecture for Verizon Business Group. So I work with, I've been with the company for 15 years. I'm working with financial services clients on infrastructure projects. We do a lot of software-defined networking, migration to cloud. Obviously, most recently, our focus has been more around, hey, how does 5G and edge computing, are these technologies going to transform the way financial services are being delivered to end user? It's a real pleasure to be with you guys this afternoon.
Thank you both. And so today we'll hear some very new and important ways to consider how speed impacts and affects businesses. But before I get started, I want to kind of give an overview of the big picture of 5G, and I'll put it in context relative to some of the industrial revolutions, rather, that we haven't seen personally, but that at least I haven't, that we've seen in history. And every give or take 100 years or so, since the 18th century, we've experienced an evolutionary dramatic shift in commerce, from first industrial revolution, from kind of modern steam power, to the second revolution, to mass production, and then in the 20th century, we've experienced electronic and information technology. So there's a big shift now in the 21st century, and the fourth industrial revolution is underway, and it's all about connectivity, compute, and intelligence. And we're lucky enough to have two subject matter experts relative to the technology side and from a use case perspective on how leveraging 5G for kind of new solutions help enhance the enterprise and businesses, from emerging advances in artificial intelligence, cloud, edge computing, and the Internet of Things. And as I mentioned, 5G, which is the fifth generation of wireless technology, is that industrial revolution that we're upon today. And some may describe it as kind of like the fastest and most robust technology that they've ever seen, which means for the consumer and for the enterprise, quicker downloads, lower lag, lower latency relative to impact and how we work and live. And the connectivity benefits of 5G are expected to make businesses more efficient and give consumers more access to faster information than ever, in the way of connected cars, smart communities, IoT, and immersive education, and a host of others. And we'll get into these a bit more today. So if you can imagine, we've gone through the iterations of the generations from 1G to 2G to 3G and 4G. And now, again, as I mentioned, 5G is upon us. So I'd like to with kind of the use cases, and we can dive more into the technology here shortly. But Scott, if you wouldn't mind, give us a bit on how you came across 5G, how you see it impacting your industry and your enterprise in particular, and kind of share your ideas on how the technology, you know, and how you measure and risk introducing new technologies into your portfolio.
Yeah, sure, Jude. Thanks for the opportunity. Really, industries that are ripe for disruption, you can imagine, large, rather slower on the uptake, and often steeped in tradition. And our industry, the insurance and financial services industry, is one of those that is ripe for disruption. And you either choose to participate in the disruption or you will be disrupted. And I think that's the message is the methodologies and the way that we assess risk historically have often been in physical inspections or physical confirmation about conditions, either structural conditions of the property or elements of the property risk and assessment of that. You can also look at something like probably the fastest adaptation of this is in telematics for automobile insurance. Obviously, with telematics, you're beginning to get risk signals that are captured in big data environments and shoved into the cloud environment. And all of a sudden, they know a lot more about my behavior when I'm driving my vehicle, at least as to the operation of the vehicle, which can help in both rating and understanding the risk profile, my risk profile specifically about my behaviors, the speed, the acceleration, the braking, the steering, all of this, the operation, the duration. So all of this information is flooding and we're able to leverage this technology. Now, in property insurance and in casualty care insurance like workers' compensation, where you may have human activity that you want to understand, this is where we're exploring the ways that 5G can actually expand. So where we would normally physically inspect and identify risk conditions, there are ways, if we can envision measuring risk parameters, any kind of risk parameter, that you can envision putting a measurement around, that detail and that information and that contemporaneous view of risk can be captured. The data can be put up into the multi-cloud environment. You can run algorithms or deep learning techniques to derive insights and information related to conditions of the risk. And this is true across many of the property and, as I mentioned, the casualty lines, where we see opportunity to leverage this capability of taking a narrowband technology that allows for narrow or small bits of data to be captured and shoved out. We don't rely on the frailties of Wi-Fi. We're not subject to that. We can be deep in 3 stories below grade and still have long battery life, which is the benefit of low power facility, and be able to capture information about risk and the way that it changes. And so we're interested in not only existing conditions, but also how things change over time. And right now we don't have a very good lens or optics around being able to capture that. But 5G is basically, and including the Internet of Things, is enabling technology that is allowing us to have a more contemporaneous view of risk, which helps us support the overarching opportunity to help our clients manage their total cost of risk. And that's both those that are covered by coverages within insurance and those that are not covered in insurance. And both of those are a part of the effort that we deploy with our clients, trying to help them lower their total cost of risk.
We've got 5G coupled with you know, the Internet of Things, as you mentioned a couple of other aspects of 5G. And I'd like to pivot to Luke here. Maybe give us just a little bit more in depth on kind of the components and aspects of 5G, as well as some other use cases that you're seeing, because you see a larger breadth and width of financial institutions in your day-to-day.
Yeah, definitely. What I like about the examples that Scott shared is that they're around IoT. And when we think of 5G, many people will think primarily of like it's the next leap in speed. little bit by analogy to the 3G to 4G transition. And the reality is that 5G is a lot more than that. Now it pushes the performance envelope along 8 distinct directions, and we call that the 8 currencies of 5G. And obviously, I don't want to go in detail here, but you can search on the internet. There's a fair amount of detail here. We're talking about higher speed, higher volume of data, lower latency, and higher reliability, and so forth. So there's a number of dimensions that 5G brings to the table, and as a result of that, it really kind of expands quite a bit the number of use cases that our customers are looking into. If I kind of step back and kind of group the use case in 2 kind of large categories, that's something I would call kind of sustaining innovation. Essentially, that leveraging technology to deliver existing services in a more effective manner. And then the other category would be more of disruptive innovation, where now you're delivering brand new services, or you're creating a customer experience that's so extraordinary that it actually puts the service in different class. That allows company to either go after a different class of their segment of customers, or kind of create a brand new market altogether. So if you start by the sustaining innovation first, that's probably the one that's a little easier to absorb. The type of speed and reliability that 5G brings to the table really allows you to do better branch banking, just as an example, right? Instead of relying on a wired connection, we can use what we call fixed wireless access to deliver the same type of speed, bring a lot of agility in how you deploy branches or ATM. Opens door to event-based banking. Right? You can have an event where you have a lot of people gathering. Now it's possible for you to set up shop in the morning, deliver your services, and move on at the end of the day. So brings a lot of flexibility there. But I would kind of say this is kind of an improvement into existing types of services. This is kind of one step toward what we call network as a service, where now, instead of building what we call building a church for Easter, right, where you create a network to support the peak capacity that you'll ever encounter, now you create a network environment that essentially is available and consumable as you need it. So you only pay for what you need. That's kind of first class of innovation that we're seeing in use cases. The other one, I think, the more disruptive innovation tend to leverage both the 8 currencies, or some of the 8 currencies of 5G, in conjunction with edge computing. Edge computing essentially allows you to tap into enormous compute power right at the edge of the network. And by the edge, I mean essentially in the service provider network, on the edge facing the client. So what that does is, first of all, it really brings some capabilities like AI, machine vision, natural language processing. And it allows to simplify tremendously the end device. You don't need to have a lot of compute power in your hands to kind of support these functions. So this is driving new form factors for the endpoint, and they don't need to be very bulky. And it simplifies. One benefit is simplifies the life cycle management of the software that sits on the device. Now think about a mobile application that a bank or a financial institution has to develop and maintain for all the different versions of iOS and Android, and there's a lot of effort that's required to do that. The ability to extract that software and actually place it at the edge of the network. Okay. There's only one version of it, and all the device does is create a secure tunnel to that edge device, and you can reproduce all the flexibility and keep it fresh. So, if you look at these types of application, now you can think of, avatar type situation where you replace maybe a teller by a lifelike avatar that can use computer vision to read the emotion of the end user and react in real time. You can think of things like shopping assistant that will leverage knowledge of merchant and environment, inventory of merchant and environment, as well as some of the data about the end user. Essentially, bring the two together in a very novel manner. So a lot of good, very cool stuff that we're doing. I would say that it's probably more of there's a lot more kind of proof of concept and work that needs to take place there. But that's an area that I think, from a risk mitigation perspective, as Scott mentioned, you really can't afford to miss out on this. It's really important to jump with 2 feet and explore what these technology mean for your particular industry.
Yeah, you bring up some great points, and you proof of concept, which is kind of leading into like, so we're all engineers on this call.
Hey Jude, I don't know if it's only me, but I can't. You might be on mute there.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay. I was saying that you mentioned proof of concept. We're all engineers on this call, and we've got a larger audience that conceptually may kind of get it. Where can people or enterprises like Scott's kind of?
Hey Jude, I think you're still on mute.
Can you hear me, Scott?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can hear you.
I'm not sure if you lost your audio connection. So I'll pivot to you, Scott, here while we get Luke back. So thank you again, Scott. Really appreciate it. Now, you were in an article I read recently that's on LinkedIn, kind of discussing. You mentioned use cases on 5G. And just kind of how it's going to be disruptive. And Luke mentioned sustaining innovation and disruptive innovation. You gave us some kind of glimpse into that. Is 5G for you going to help with your existing, sustaining innovation and be more disruptive, or is it going to be the other way around?
Maybe just a couple of further examples would be beneficial. So sometimes we're looking at larger scale causes of loss. And if you look to something like commercial cooking environments or any kind of manufacturing environment that has these kind of volatile environments where you can control or you can observe different dimensions. So one of the things that we began looking at are instrumentation to be able to measure. I mentioned measuring risk parameters earlier, and really one of the risk parameters frequently deriving loss scenarios related to commercial cooking environments is grease. Obviously depends on the type of food that is being prepared, but grease buildup and the natural inherent temperature capacity of that grease leads to effectively kitchen fires or commercial cooking fires. In this kind of environment, if we have a device we're actually deploying in Stockholm, Sweden right now for a client that we're exploring the measurement of a certain risk parameter, and that gives us a profile, and it allows us to take either early action in order to preventative action, or it also helps to dial in the degree of and frequency of maintenance. So as you think about scales, and then you think about all the commercial cooking environments all over the world, certainly in the US, think about the application of being able to contemporaneously monitor conditions and either take avertive measures or early warning measures or other measures. Another example would be we have remote sensing 5G enabled monitors on our fire pumps in our London office. This is exactly the kind of thing we would normally go do a pump turn in order to determine what's the quality of that fire suppression capability by those pumps. Now with the 5G enabled remote sensing, we're able to measure pressure, flow, duration, timing, details about the operations so that we either have an early warning, and certainly working with people like the manufacturers of the fire pumps, we can identify vibration elements or other signals, risk signals, that can give us an early warning. And obviously the goal is to be sure that those fire pumps are operational when we need them, and that you don't have a problem when you need them to put out a fire. So those are two use cases that we're currently working on, and you can just imagine really the field is wide open for just envisioning the measuring of risk and being able to put IoT and 5G enabled capability in that regard.
Yeah, you mentioned like the field is wide open, and as I was mentioning, Luke, I think you're back now and you can hear me.
Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I was saying that there were 3 engineers on this call, and some of this technology and some of the terms that we're using may be kind of esoteric. Where can an enterprise kind of, put their hands on this technology, like for fintech startups that are all about innovation and exploring outcomes? And where can they kind of get a feel for this technology? And also, you mentioned edge computing. Where is that edge? Do we have partnerships that kind of help facilitate not only the 5G but the edge computing?
Yeah. So absolutely. So if you want to come and take a look at the technology in action, so we have 6 labs where essentially we partner with some of the technology partners where our clients who on proof of concepts and a lot of innovation there, and we can definitely take our customers there to essentially view the art of the possible. You mentioned edge computing, the partnership that we announced a year ago with AWS to essentially to bring the AWS technology stack right at the edge of the Verizon network. So now it's really available right there, just on the customer-facing side of our network. It's available right now in 5 cities, including Atlanta, New York, Boston. So obviously very important hubs for the financial services community. You can go into your developer can go into their AWS account and start moving workloads right there using AWS Wavelength or 5G Edge, and just experiment with it. Exactly, see it in action, so to speak. Why edge computing is important is really for those applications that require very low latency. You have a lot of compute power, but sometimes if that power sits in the cloud, in the centralized location, there's a lot of latency related to packets traveling back and forth between the user and the centralized cloud, and that travel time can be unpredictable as packets bounce around the internet. The ability to bring all that compute right at the edge creates a kind of real-time feel that is really important when you think about things like gaming, immersive gaming, anything that involves physical security. Think about autonomous driving, and anything that involves interaction. So I mentioned before, like the lifelike avatar. Things like that are very sensitive to latency and are a good application for edge computing.
Listen, we can talk for days, for hours on end about the possibilities, and you mentioned the art of the possibility. And we really appreciate both you gentlemen, Scott, and you, Luke, as well, for kind of giving a glimpse into what is happening today relative to 5G and edge computing, and kind of giving our audience just to kind of, I guess, peek under the hood, if you will. There's a lot of information out there, especially at our booth here at FinTech South 2020. We definitely would love to engage you in the conversation, definitely relative to kind of what is possible, where you can kind of get a peek under the hood and get your hands on the technology. So with that said, Luke, I'll turn to you. Any last words? And then Scott, as our guest, I'd like you to close us out.
I think we're living through probably one of the most exciting phase of the telecom era, right? There's so much things that are changing right now, and as I think as to where we're going to be in 2 years, it's just very exciting. It creates risk, but opportunities as well, and we gotta jump right in there. Thank you, Jude.
Thank you, Scott. You might be on mute, my friend. There you go.
The future's not a place that we get to go. It's a place that we're creating together. And I think it's a really exciting opportunity in time. Awesome.
Awesome. Well, there you have it. 5G, the need for speed. Thank you again, Luke Boivin from Verizon, and Scott Steinmetz from Allianz. We really appreciate your time and look forward to future conversations. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.